Sounds magical.
It's a fun,
Hey,
fun
hey,
one. All right, guys. We're here for episode number 5
three,
or
three,
4. Is it 3?
four.
No. We did Zardos. We did
The Fly,
The Fly. We did
cliffhanger. So
Cliffhanger.
this is four.
So
This
this
is
is
four.
episode number 4.
Yeah.
Jake, why don't you lead us in for your pick?
Well, it's probably one of my favorite movies. I think it's a perfect script. Everything about it's awesome.
No,
Yeah,
talking about dude movies, because Tom, you had brought it up like last time. This has to be like up there in like the pinnacle of like dude guy movies. And in fact, something can be
Yeah.
said for all of Michael Mann films or a lot of his filmography. I mean, dude literally made Miami Vice, dude. Doesn't get more dude than that.
Well, Heat is sort of a remake of LA Takedown, which
Hmm.
was a movie he did too. So he kind of really wanted to redo it.
Yeah,
He
because
dealt with
there's a clip
Michael.
out there with the diner scene shot with 2 other actors.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
he
He's
had the
kind of,
script of Heat
you,
falling around in Hollywood at that time.
yeah, you definitely get an idea. You definitely get a deja vu when you watch Heat if you watch LA Takedown. Now, we've dealt with Michael Mann before in the past of our company 3,
Hmm.
and he he's always trying to redo his stuff. The guy is like
mm,
really really particular. Like he'll cut a movie 80 times. I was like, damn, I make a 9-minute movie. I can't stand looking at it more than 10 times. And the guy, looks at all his movies a lot. And my friend was an assistant editor on Black Hat, and he
Hmm.
was like, dude, just the look on his face is like he went to war.
One of
You
the
know,
only movies I've walked out of in the theater.
Black Hat,
Yeah.
yeah,
It was
it's
just
just boring.
too boring, dude. I was like, I can't even pretend to be interested in something. This is too much. I
Yeah.
give up, Michael, man. You beat me. That's the only one, though.
So Heat was promoted as the Battle of the Titans. Pacino, De Niro, like let's do it, right? And
And it is, in terms of film history, it is a pretty massive moment. Like, even if you've been following their career slightly, even if you don't like 1 or 2 films, they have given enough of a filmography for this to be an event match.
yeah, well, they both were in a Godfather movie. They just weren't in scenes together, right?
Which was like one big miss.
Yeah.
Cinema.
So this was sort of like a built up for that moment, right? And they're at obviously odds with each other.
The
Pacino's a
classic
cop.
setup, cop and detective.
So Pacino's a cop who's really obsessed with his work. Is that how this
Yeah,
goes?
yeah. I feel like
And
a way to understand, like, I feel like one analog for this film is noir films. I feel like this is
okay,
Michael Mann's attempt at like modern noir, where like these themes are prevalent in noir films. People on the underside, on the dark, on the underbelly of society, crime, uh,
um,
detectives obsessed with their
yeah,
work,
yeah,
workaholics, um,
yeah. They're bank robbers.
tragic
It's a
failing relationships.
classy bank robbers.
Eh,
They work on they
Well,
work
that's the
on
second
schedule.
that's the second layer, right? Because noir inherently started developing like a style with them, and then at a certain point they almost took over too much with style.
Mm,
And this element of crime and um the other side of society, which also included like prostitution, drugs, gambling. At the time noir films were being made, 1930s, during the Hays Code, this was very um risque, and the way to shoot this in the chiaroscuro lightings and those expressionistic setups gave it a sort of gritty realism that the musical movies of the time were kind of missing, because they were all shot in studio.
right.
So feel like Heat is wrestling between these two modalities of realism and style. And it's almost present in the two characters too. Uh, uh, De Niro's Neil is all style, dude. He wears slick suits. Lives in Malibu. House looks like a painting. De Niro's character is all like realism. Talks in like
Yeah,
these
gritty cop.
kind of
Yeah.
crazy like ways. He keeps saying like, you become what you chase, or something to that effect. Where like,
Yeah.
he has a nice woman who loves him. They can have a beautiful life, but he's just too obsessed with his work because that's his only purpose, which mirrors De
So
Niro's character.
So I think that's what he was saying. Like, the speech that they give or he gives to Pacino's character is like, I can cut, we're both pretty much the same people. We can cut and run. We have to cut and run when they see the action. They're obsessed with the action of their pursuits, and I don't think De Niro really does what he does for money. I think he does it for the adrenaline, it feels
Mhm.
like, right? And also somewhat like a weird respect aspect where all he gathered, well, him and Val Kilmer's character sort of gather like specialists in their field. Like there's a demolition
Professional.
guy, there's a
They're obsessed with
professionals
professionalism
to an extent, because
until he
De
starts
Niro
breaking the rules.
they start doing stupid shit, right? Kind of like in Goodfellas when people
Yep.
start buying shit after they have the Lufthansa heist, and they're like, "Take this shit back, you idiots!" So yeah, and it's really well constructed in sort of like slowly creating that paranoia that we feel because we almost don't want De Niro to get caught. I was actually siding more for De Niro than I am Pacino. Pacino, I thought
Yeah.
was I don't know. He kind of rubs me the wrong way in this movie. He does the bravado thing. He's like, she's got a great ass. That shit. I'm like, God, dude, chill that fuck down.
It's in okay, Jake, what do you have to say about that?
Um, well, there's a few things.
Hmm.
I thought it was interesting that they used their real names, and that was immediately what triggered, or like their real names, but then also um, when I think his character's name was Michael, the said used the term slick and gave everyone up, but then they were able to like they kind of like knew everybody's name. That was like one of the clues or whatever, but like just the fact that they were using their real names was like the that was the easy ticket to
Hmm.
like figure out who they were.
Hmm.
And they got so like the story is interesting. I know it was based off of like an alleged real life tale from a Chicago cop. So it's kind of like
Hmm.
I didn't know
Neil the
Michael Mann
Crawling.
was
Yeah.
in Chicago, or he was born from Chicago, but it kind of like it's got that Chicago gangster vibe in small town Los Angeles. And I think just in general, it was kind of like each character had a relationship with the idea of family within their group and outside of their group.
Hmm.
And you can kind of see how those things sort of like those perceptions dissipate as time goes on through their relationships with women in their lives, their
Hmm.
daughters,
Yeah,
their wives, and their girlfriends, who are all
yeah.
just kind of like in the periphery
Hmm.
watching this like madness unfurl. And I thought that's kind of just I kind of looked at it as like they're all living in this fish tank,
Hmm.
and the dudes are beta fish, and they're all just going at each other, and then the girls are just like regular goldfish chilling in the side, like, what the fuck is going on
Hmm.
with all of you?
Interesting.
Well, like you brought
Yeah.
up, like it is all in the details. You mentioned the term slick and then catching on.
Hmm.
Like the details is like the small things that make it more reality based, which is
Hmm.
the guy when it explodes, the guy's eardrum had blown out, and you see it bleeding, and it's like we never. It's interesting that we don't, in action movies they just get blown through a wall, and you're just like they get up and go away, but these guys
That's a
really
really
react
great
to
point you
all that.
mentioned, Tom, because Michael Mann did a lot of research about the procedural aspect of this movie. That's where it seems so grounded in realism. And for me, this movie was almost a whiplash. Now, having watched it, like, I don't know what my rewatch count was on this, but it goes through this like hypnotic soundtrack while like these long shots of characters contemplating, and then suddenly it goes into the realism of like real gunshots going through like LA,
Yeah,
or like the
yeah,
consequences of like doing a murder on the fly. It's like
Mm.
whoa. and,
yeah.
and
The sound, yeah, the sound design,
the
incredible.
way he's able to
That's
show that balance,
definitely not.
I think it's because of what you were saying. Like he watches his movie so many times, so it's so much of this movie is about the audience experience. Like he
Mhm.
gets it. We're here for De Niro and Pacino. These are the two big sharks that keep circling each other through the first half of the movie until they're inevitably about to meet. Like it's almost
Yeah.
elevated to the point of Greek tragedy because there's this inevitability of fate in the movie. That's why like the characters of the females
Well,
and some of the other
they
characters are almost a little underwritten because these
they
two
they were
megaliths are about to collide.
they respect each other too, which is like something you don't see in like real life. Cops don't respect criminals, you know.
Yeah.
So,
But because
but
they
they
are
really
each other,
respect each
like
other.
that's the thing, right? It's like these two characters who have these women e- who they sort of like fall in love with, but they're still lonely. Like the film weirdly inherent is a lot
And
about
they know each other. Yeah,
until they find each other, like they give each
yeah,
other purpose. Him
yeah.
chasing and
Well,
then
that's a good question. Would one exist without the other?
I don't think
Like
so. I don't think Pacino's going to be
like
happy after this in his life. He's
no.
a
Okay,
miserable life. His marriage just dissolved. The one guy
right.
who, like he could talk to or kind of relate to, he just killed. And now
Yeah,
who's going to chase? Like traffic tickets or
yeah. He'd be so bored out in his life.
I think he'd
But
be bored out of his mind.
yeah, and if no one was chasing De Niro, then he doesn't have much going on because
There is no
he's just
adrenaline.
like, okay,
Yeah.
no. I mean, he lives in
Clearly,
a
money
cold
doesn't give. He's living in
place.
the best house in like Malibu and he's so damn miserable.
So yeah, he's
Like all
miserable.
that,
Yeah,
that deep blue that's been soaked in, like he seems so deeply alone.
yeah. It is a melancholic movie. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
melancholic.
It's
Yeah,
tragic, like these high elevated kind of dualities of good and evil, whereas when they do come face to face in the diner, like they each see each other in the other, like
yeah,
some of the aspects of De Niro's character, I feel like if you think about it in those philosophical terms, like he isn't the best guy, like it's kind of an asshole, kind of a fucking like he's doing his job, but he can be too much sometimes,
yeah.
And De Niro, like, for better or worse, like, is taking up until a certain point was taking care of his like crew, and was like slightly like better to deal with than
Did
Pacino.
you guys want? Did you guys want De Niro to get away with it
Yes,
and his gang? You wanted De Niro and his gang to get away with it.
Kind of.
it's like I
Because you
wanted it,
relate
but
because I relate to because you like, they're humans with goals and objectives that are plausible and reasonable, but they're going about it the wrong way. So you want them to, you're like, oh, you guys are real people, but you're also like you're willing to do some rotten things just to get
Well,
ahead.
okay. So Obviously, I hope people haven't seen this movie already.
Mm.
So he's driving and he's free. De Niro's free. What does he
Mhm.
do? He can't let this go get away with it. He turns the car around, and
Mhm.
everyone, I remember in the theater, because I saw him this first time in the theater, everyone's like, "Oh, come on," because he's going back to kill that dude who ratted him out.
But dude,
Yeah.
who can understand this more than dudes,
Could not let that
That's where
go.
it's like such a dude movie. It's like we're gonna fucking have the fisticuffs, motherfucker. It's
Can't let it go.
more than like
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, because he's free. He's got away with it. But for his ego, I guess, is it his
Mhm.
ego? I don't know. What is it that made him turn the car around to go kill that dude?
That could have been it. He can't let. There's some things it seems like he can't. There's things he can let go and things he can't let go, and he couldn't
Res-
let that go. And I think
Respect.
it made him careless.
Hmm.
Oh man, like that's what ended it. Like that's
Yeah.
the minute he turns the car around, we know he's done, you
But
know?
it's like the exterior is the professional, and he's led a life this so far. Seems like the character is in his 50s. And whenever
Yeah.
he follows his rules, he's gone this far, he's clearly like made it. And it's like the emotional side of him is like bursting to come out, in the moments with his love interest, whenever they're on the highway, like he wants to go to Fiji, clearly he wants another life. Like, part of him is like really is tired of this and would like, some emotional catharsis or some connection with another person, but he
Mm.
can't have it because it's like your past just keeps coming back. Your patterns, your habits keep coming back to pull you down.
Mhm. I'd like to point some things out about the production in terms of, I think saw something about how for the CSI folks, like he
Mm.
hired actual like LAPD lab people to
Uh,
play uh roles as extras. So that what they're doing is like they're they're like doing their job that they normally do on camera. So
hmm.
there's
Mm.
like that layer, that veil of
Yeah.
authenticity, I guess. I don't like that
Yeah.
word, but basically that. And then the thing with like a lot of the nat sound and the dialogue within environments is like, even with the shootout, is like that wasn't like he actually went in there with squibs and blanks and shot rounds in downtown Los Angeles during the day on a weekend
Mm.
to get these extended echoes and the actual, you know, and it kind of points out, I think, like there's a sense of, as a viewer, it's fiction. We get that. We're there to be entertained and to be uh engrossed in this world and escape from this world. That's kind of, I think, why we go to movies in general.
That realism
It's,
assists us in
yeah,
help.
the realism is like it pulls us in harder than like being a coward and going and getting an FX pack and layering in a bunch of like generic gunshots and calling
Yeah.
it good and patting yourself on the back.
Love that you said being a
Because,
coward.
it's a cowardly move because you have to get the permit, you
Mm,
have to get the firearms supervisor with the FFL license, you've got to get the insurance, you've
mm,
got to do all these things. Blanks are expensive as hell.
mm.
Like
Yeah.
you have to make those investments, but when you do, you can expect a certain return on that investment, being that whoever's watching it is getting pulled in a little more than
Mm.
if you
Mm.
didn't make that investment. And I think there's little things like that, especially in, like, this movie is really good at kind of bringing that type of thing to light. But I think there's a lot of things that we can make decisions about as filmmakers moving forward. You know, would it be possible to do that again?
Mm.
Maybe, you know, but
Mm.
I know that you can't film on off the LAX tarmac the way they are on and off like they did. You can't do that anymore because there's
Yeah.
like FAA restrictions. But I think as far as like using Los Angeles as a set and like making it real and enough to where we're captivated by the story
But at
as
the
a
same
physical
time, make
form.
it dreamy and surreal too. Like to piggyback off that, there are also shots like where the characters walk out and there's a mound of sulfur in the back. Or like, Tom, you can speak more to the fact that literally the whole movie seems to be shot with long lenses. Like, who can
Yeah.
imagine
Well,
Yeah,
that
it's
Santa
on
Monica
real
is
it's
like an actual
locations,
it's
movie?
like in
it's
real spots.
it's
You would
anamorphic. They shot it anamorphic.
Yeah, you would imagine though, and
Yeah.
they would try to show the scope and like which there are some like nice
Yeah.
wide shots, but most of it is in close-ups, like which kind
Yeah.
of separates the character from the background, and sometimes the background is used as like a beautiful,
Well,
okay,
the long lens and also anamorphic causes a sense of loneliness, like you were saying earlier. I think that was purposeful. You're isolated. You're sort of
separated
you get a
from the
really
background.
good, yeah, you really get a good view of faces, and you're just kind of there's no, that it really separates people from each other when you shoot. And yeah, it's a psychological thing that he obviously thought through. Like, do you so and I know Michael Mann is like he's a perfectionist to somewhat of a irritating
Hmm.
level.
Hmm.
Do you think he should be put on the wall of fame, top 10 directors of all time? He seems to be overlooked a lot, no? Like Michael Mann's never mentioned in the same vein as Scorsese.
I mean, I
I
think
think
there's
he I think
stuff
he
that
made
he
a
can
better
learn.
crime
I think
movie.
top 25.
Oh, come on. I would put him in the top 10. There's not many, but I would put him in the top 10 as a craftsman.
Yeah,
Sure, for sure.
Obviously he's lived long enough to really fuck up his legacy.
Right.
But Black
No, you're
Hat's
right. As a
obviously
craftsman, for sure,
yeah.
top 10.
Oh yeah, like
No,
like
because
even the
talking
Ferrari
more about
movie.
what Jake was saying about the attention to detail and like giving a fuck about going the extra mile. Both the
Hmm.
houses of the main characters. De Niro's house is a real place in Miami. It's an art house. It's called the Stall House. You can visit it. What a
Wait,
brilliant choice for
there's a
that.
stall
And
house.
oh no, it's not the Stall
There's
House.
a
Sorry,
stall house
sorry. The Stall House is it's
in
on.
LA. Yeah,
Yeah,
Hollywood.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's another name for this house, but this is also like a real location, real house. Belongs to
Hmm.
some like artist or someone. Um,
the one that Danny Trejo died in. It's like
um,
on the east side somewhere.
yeah. Um, Pacino's character's house is in Santa Monica, belongs to a postmodern architect, which is like this movie takes these crazy leaps. He's supposed to be a detective in an LA salary, but somehow he's living in Santa Monica in a postmodern
Mm,
house. I don't care, man. It looks
yeah.
gorgeous.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and this movie
Pacino's
toes the
character.
line in like in playing with realism and style like that. Like you can have a real house in Malibu, but then he's going to like frame it in like this bleeding blue, and again takes a reference from like a famous painting which is also about loneliness, the Pacific, I think it's called.
There's also Nighthawks.
Hmm.
Nighthawks has that quality too. Like it's like a diner scene where somebody's just sitting there and it's
Huh.
unsingle light. It's really, yeah, it's really lonely. I mean, a lot of ways, like, I mean, Michael Mann plays loneliness really well, man and loneliness.
Hmm.
A lot of his
A lot
decisions
of its
are
characters
basically,
are, yeah.
yeah, I mean, even, in Manhunter, very
Hmm.
lonely, you know. Um, in Last of Mohicans, uh, kind
Wait,
of
Last
he's on
Mohicans
his
was
own.
Michael Mann?
Yeah, that was Michael Mann.
Oh, that just blew my mind.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean,
Dude,
he
he can do a
definitely,
lot of stuff. He's gone through a bunch of genres, huh? He's very
yeah,
versatile.
yeah, he doesn't get the credit. He's not that sort of, he doesn't really talk about his work all that
Okay, his
much.
movies aren't the
Maybe
most
that's why.
like they are a little, they do require some engagement, I feel. They're not like light watches, because of his
Mhm.
attention to detail, like this kind of Kubrick kind of obsession. You have to engage with them to kind of get a little more out of them.
So in terms of the production of the project itself, like the sound design was just, again, I have to mention that it's just insane
You can notice that
because
first like frame.
he makes the decisions of certain things, like it's quiet, and then all of a sudden, boom, like it's really, as filmmakers ourselves, it is an interesting way to say, what do you decide to let people hear? You know,
I was
it's
I,
amazing.
that's the thing. Like I was noticing the Foley on this. I was like, oh man, we really like sometimes technology really like shoots us in the foot. Because just by the nature of like, now sync sound and boom mics being on set all the time, no one bothers to do Foley. And it's like only in a documentary should I be hearing all like recorded science sounds as if it's like, a scientific representation. In any other case, whenever it's a narrative, it has to be a subjective representation and there has to be expressionism involved. And Foley, just by the nature, is so much more elegant than like just recording direct sound.
It, it's an incredible setup if you can do it and have the time to do it. But a lot of people overlook it just because
Convenient.
we're okay for us. We're kind of like a DIY people, so we're already stretched pretty thin when it comes to shooting the project, editing the project, finding the music, all this stuff. So yeah, Foley sort of gets overlooked a lot because that's a lot of spent energy
It's
in what we
painstaking.
think is uh,
Like it's
sort of. I
painstaking
mean,
to make like a Harley Davidson, or it's painstaking to like make some
well,
handicraft. Like,
I'll put it this way. I was at the Warner Brothers Deep Blue Sea Foley session,
hmm.
and they were going over the same reel over and over and over again. They spent 2 weeks on it, and they were going crazy. A Foley sounds in at Warner Brothers, they were going crazy because
So
they were
there's
sitting there going
like some
over
of
and
these
over and over again.
industries have had a natural death. It's because
There's an entire department that's just dedicated to do it perfectly, and I can't imagine what it must have been like on a Foley stage or a ADR stage with Michael Mann on Heat. Because I mean, the sound mixer must have been like stretched to the
wow.
limits, to his limits. Because that is, you're right. If we had the time to actually do it right, every single thing, and I wish it is a craft, man. It's when it works, it's fun.
I want to bring something up, man. And I was thinking about it after the festival too. Is like where you get to project a film, how you get to experience it. Like just the nature of modern consumption, everything is streaming services, everything is YouTube. If you put Heat on YouTube and like on a Netflix or something, it'll just seem like another like movie, like Two Broke Girls or like whatever the fucking new Medea movies there. But it's
Uh-huh.
so not because of those reasons. Because Michael Mann spent like obsessive hours obsessing on like little Foley sounds. Like this movie needs to be experienced, like in the best theater with
Absolutely.
the biggest, most
Absolutely.
dedicated like audience, and you really might just get transformed, like you might have the experience we go to in cinemas for that emotion,
Yeah. Again,
that growth.
that's the elevation into cinematic, right? That's how things become cinematic. If you have an orchestra playing your music, that becomes cinematic versus a synthesizer. No shade on John Carpenter, but come on. But we're talking about like that elevates it into a cinematic level because look, this is a cop procedural drama, and that could be like CSI Miami or CSI New York or CSI LA or whatever. So the fact that he does put those details in, you're right, it makes it more that it has to be seen on a big screen, not on a phone or a TV
Like
even.
breaks my heart. Like, why are we losing the value of cinema? Like I get it
Well,
for
You know,
monetary reasons and like inconvenience, but like there is no other experience like it, man.
I
Like
don't know how you would
watching
go
see
about.
film festival, like watching those shots, I was like, what a what a pleasure, what a luxury
a,
that I get to
a
experience
lot of stuff, a lot of stuff gets lost when you're watching it on the phone, guaranteed.
Yeah.
Because when I saw
100%.
it on the big screen, when I saw the shorts on the big screen, I was like, oh, that's what they were looking at. Because I've seen a couple of them on the small screen, but when you see it on the big screen, it's completely different. You know, it's an experience.
Yeah. No, I've had a theater project that I've been wanting to experiment with at some point, where you figure out like, so you know how like Beverly and the Vista just play like 35 millimeter prints of whatever movie.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Some theaters have where they're projecting digital versions of older movies for like a limited
yes.
period of time.
Hmm.
So I'm like, I want to find out where you can get basically a license to exhibit any movie that's, like Heat. Like, where can I get a license to show Heat for a week or two on one screen at a theater somewhere? You know?
You would be charging admission because if you
Yeah.
want, you can bring the 4K Blu-ray to like a Regal Cinema, and they will project it for you if you rent out the theater.
Mhm. But
They
like,
will, but if you charge admission, that's a different story.
yeah, see, that's the thing is like,
There's some
how can you do that?
about who can project it, and yeah, because there's multiple people involved in such a big movie. It's not even like one person could give you that permission.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
whoever the current rights holder is for North America, and if theatricals included, because
See,
I
yeah.
just I
it would
feel
be
like there's no,
difficult, but if you found like some obscure ass movie, like like House, that might
Yeah.
be a little easier to
yeah.
screen.
Which one? House, like in the 80s house?
It'll be a fun experience for whoever's watching. Like it's like for 40 minutes, like we're on a track, and suddenly like it switches because it's gonna be like the clips are gonna be together, and then you're gonna be like, wow, the vibe really changed there.
What
Yeah, I
was
would like. Oh, go ahead.
go ahead, Jake.
No, I was just afterward. I mean, I don't need to say this on this, but I was going to suggest that figure out a way to cut in imagery of the film as we're
Mm,
talking about it, like
mm,
relevant imagery,
mm.
to kind of like make it more interesting and give you some room to like make those edits and
Yeah.
clean
Yeah.
those things up and stuff. But we can talk about that.
So that speech about what he does when he says he's going to cut bait if he sees the heat come around the corner, right?
Mm.
Mhm.
So what I as a when I first saw it, what was it? What movie? When was this come out? 98,
95,
99,
95.
the year I was
95?
born. The year I was
Oh,
born.
shit. Oh man. Shit, I'm old. Damn, I was in high school already. Um, no, I was in college. Holy shit. Okay, so I didn't necessarily understand. I think it sounded cool when he said it, but he's saying like if he feels anything, he's just gonna up and leave, right? He's gonna follow his instincts, in other words.
Mhm.
Or if he feels the heat, if he feels the tinge of, it's like the when they were breaking into the
The
mineral
warehouse.
depot or
Yeah.
whatever, mineral warehouse. He knew what was going on, and he
The
was like,
truck banging,
"Drop
yeah.
it, leave it, we're going." And they just left their shit and left. Like, I think
Right.
that was kind of like foreshadowing what he would eventually do.
Yeah.
Well,
Because
he dumps
he's like a super
Amy
professional,
Brenneman.
like where they had it planned. They were going to get out in 3 minutes. It's like they're very high level.
Did
Mhm.
you believe the relationship between Amy? I guess Amy Brenneman was the girl, and him. Do you believe that relationship?
Who was Amy Brenneman again?
She's Neil's girlfriend. Like he
Oh,
kind of takes to her. Yeah,
interesting. I did feel like her
you get the
struggle. It's
chemistry.
like she's disgusted by his like real work, but she is kind of into him. Dude is kind of like does wear suits and is vulnerable with her.
Yeah, I don't know. I just didn't get the chemistry between them. I didn't understand it. Maybe.
Did
Hmm.
she say she was from Kentucky, or where did was or Tennessee or something? Or
Yeah, yeah. She's from that area. But yeah, I guess a Slick City guy.
Yeah, I think there's like a certain maybe naivete that she had, being like, I'm gonna go to Los Angeles and be a graphic designer.
Right.
You know, you do that
But what
for
was
long enough and not actually do it, it gets lonely. And you know, I felt it was plausible.
okay? Like I guess because we're used to seeing the love, like the love being so intense, that
Mm.
this was just sort of a slow building attraction, I
Mm.
guess. You know,
Yeah, I
and then
think she convinced herself there's nothing wrong with, you know, and he kind of
a guy.
ignored her and treated her like, you know, just kind of like was off-putting to her in
Yeah,
the beginning.
yeah. That's why I was like really, she would find that type of person attractive. Okay. And then the Ashley. Okay, that's the other thing. Ashley Judd going for Hank Azaria is a little bit far fetched. When Hank Azaria was the other guy, I'm like, really?
No.
That
Dude, I heard
guy?
an incident about Hank Azaria and De Niro and Pacino. I don't know if it's made up or true, but I'd like to believe it's true. So
Okay.
apparently, like they're waiting for a scene or something, and De Niro calls like Azaria over, like, "Hey, you, come on." He comes over. He's like, "You're the guy who does voices on The Simpsons, right?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah." He's like, "Do Bart." He's like, "Oh no, I don't do Bart." He's like, "I know, do Bart." He does like his best Bart impression, and Pacino's like, "Get the fuck out of here." I just want to
Uh,
imagine like Pacino and De Niro just bullying Hank Azaria on set.
well, I mean, I mean, we never seen him really act in anything aside from voice acting, and
But at that
so
time, even more so, that division between like TV and like movie, these guys are like the legends. Like, I feel like they
well,
do something like
okay, not to get down the superficial road, but Val Kilmer or Hank Azaria, you know,
yeah, yeah.
let's be
It's
but that does add to a little bit more dynamic and depth, simply because they work together at the bank, I guess.
hmm.
Like he works with her, right? So they're coworkers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that was a little bit sort of like,
Dude,
come
what did you think
on.
of Val Kilmer?
Oh, he's great. He's great in this, man. Like
Like,
amazing.
what a
Like
great supporting actor. Like he's doing just
yeah,
what his role is supposed to be, not trying to
yeah.
outshine any of the two main guys, but like what a strong, solid like character.
Dude, he got away with it. He moved on. Like he walked away because Ashley Judd tells him to, they're here. They're here for you. And he
Hmm.
walks up and then he turns around and leaves. So he's good, you know? Not to spoil anything again, but yeah. He's one of the
Yeah, he
few.
was the one
So
who survived.
so
He's the
Heat
final girl.
2, Heat 2.
He too, baby.
I guess they're in the process of making it now,
But
as
it's a
far as I
prequel.
know. Yeah, but I think they're gonna flash back and forth.
Who's the actor for Pacino? I forgot.
Not Timothy Chalamet, but someone in that vein, I guess. Maybe Timothy Chalamet.
No, I don't think so. I think that's what he wanted. Pacino wanted it to be Timothy, but that'd be
Uh,
ridiculous. That'd be ridiculous.
um, yeah, man. He Slick.
Slick, dude. Slick
Oh,
is
Tom Sizemore. You guys forgot about Tom Sizemore.
Tom
You know?
Sizemore was in this.
Yeah. Yeah, that guy, man, that guy when
Just got
when
evil
the bullet
eyes.
when the bullets started flying and he's still going, he's still trying to survive, and he tries to save the kid
Yeah,
and he gets shot over
yeah.
it. So
A
it's kind
bit
of
of redemption.
somewhat
Yeah.
of a redemption, yeah. It's kind of weird, but
Well, did he? I mean, see, that's where I was wondering, like, you know, yeah, he's trying to save the kid, but at the
oh,
same time,
use them as a
is there a
shield.
The kid in
thought,
this
well,
position.
is there a thought in his mind that, you know, they're not going to shoot at him if he has the kid?
Oh,
If he consciously makes that decision, is that
Yeah.
where he fails?
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with our perception of his scumbaggery for sure. R.I.P. by the way.
Really? That
But
honestly, because like I thought initially he was using the kid as a shield, but when you pointed that, I was like, oh, maybe redemption arc.
I've
Because
always
he was
thought
like
he was
more
doing that,
scumbag.
but then I mean, I
I
thought he
just
just
I give Sizemore the benefit of the doubt. You know, most people
Fuck
think
you,
he's a
Sizemore, you
scumbag.
scumbag. Even looking
He's a
at you.
scumbag. Yeah, he's a Michael Rooker of this.
Dude, that's
He's
so
got that
true.
sort
He
of
is
thing.
the Michael Rooker of this world.
You just think he's a scumbag, regardless. You know, he
Hmm.
could be like raising kittens. You'll be like, that's a scumbag. It's
I
like,
bet he
dude.
beats those kittens.
Yeah. So,
Dude. But what do you
and
think of
yeah,
Pacino and De Niro's performances?
I
Maybe
thought I saw an interview where Al Pacino's casually like inferred that they were doing cocaine.
Oh, 100. I
Often.
mean,
So when he's like having these very like
big
elaborate
ass. That's pretty clear.
performances,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a
oh,
little.
okay.
That's a little coke trip. It's
That
like
maybe that
feels
has
it's
something to
just
do.
it's
starting to
so
hit him.
it's so weird that the era is so late for them and they're still doing coke. I feel that's sort of
Dude, can you
I don't know.
imagine? What are you talking about, Tom? Can you
I,
imagine being Al Pacino or Robert De Niro in 1995? At this point, these guys have been legends for 3 decades. They feel like the kings of the world. On any set they walk on, they are fucking the guy. Like I
well,
bet
I
if
just
they wanted, like Michael Mann would be their fucking like would provide coke to them to do.
I'm just I just assumed that they had outgrown it by then
Hmm.
because what they're in their 40s now.
It's like Michael
But
Douglas from Wall Street, man. It's greed. Greed is
yeah, but I
oh,
mean, I if I I could see where that would be the case. I don't know about De Niro.
you,
He's
you
almost
can see
comatose.
you can see the very two different type of coke trips, you know. De Niro
Uh,
seems like the kind who gets like super stiff and stoic. It's probably just like, like biting his like jaw, whereas Pacino gets like loud and you get
Yeah, I don't I had this as I was thinking about the movie. I had this really sort of somewhat unpopular opinion that perhaps maybe De Niro may have been slightly miscasted, slightly,
interesting. Very unpopular.
because I kind of felt like maybe a William Peterson might have been a better Neil
Huh.
or
That
of
is
that era.
interesting.
Let's talk about that era. Plus, he's always already worked with Michael Mann in a Manhunter.
Interesting.
Um, William Peterson, yeah, I felt like he may have been maybe a better sort of like darker character. De Niro seems like I felt like he was comatose in the movie.
Really?
Yeah, he just feels like he's going through
See,
the
I
typical
thought
De
De
Niro.
Niro, that's why they cast De Niro, because his specialty is that kind of internalizing rage type of thing. And this
Okay,
movie,
so he was
you're
in that
watching these characters internalize a lot, so it
in
has to be these actors who are just so watchable with any tick they do in their face.
so in that same era, he made something called Ronin, and he basically played the same
Hmm.
part but less slick, like less sophisticated.
Hmm.
Because here, this guy Neil looks like he reads a book. Like he in Ronin, he's just sort of a international thief or bank robber or whatever. So
Hmm.
it's sort of darker. He's got a leather jacket on.
Hmm.
They're just unkempt. They're just living all in a warehouse
I
somewhere.
mean,
So
in
this
any of those
guy is
scenes where he's
more
like shooting the people or like where he's grabbing the other dude by his hair, like did he seem like disingenuous? Did he not seem like the guy who would go the extra? Like to me, he seemed like the guy who'd pop a bullet in like a dude's head, who wouldn't think twice.
uh, I just yeah, I just don't I don't know. There's something about the way that and I remember this also when I first saw it in the theater. It's just like I was so you know what? We're probably poisoned by the Goodfellas thing too, you know. or we just want him to be like, like Jimmy the Gent, you know. I don't know. Maybe he was like that too. I don't know. I just didn't feel like he was this character. Would you think De Niro lives in Malibu? He lives in Tribeca, you know? I don't know. Like he wouldn't. I
I
wouldn't
don't.
think
I
he.
see. De Niro lives
I
in
don't think
Tribeca,
that.
but when I look at Heat, I do see Neil McCauley. Like De Niro does have that ability where whatever method he does, like in fact, if I'm going to pick out characters in this movie, Pacino still seems more Pacino, and not that much is like John Hannah or whatever the name was. De Niro seems more Neil McCauley. Like he seems like I see that I see a character, I see a lone wolf who like go to
Hmm,
like, any degrees. I see a sophisticated criminal. I
okay.
see a dangerous man who has this kind of like soft vulnerability to him that's like begging to like burst out after a life of crime, and he's like a little he's like
Well,
looking
I
at
guess.
the end of the road, like two people looking at the end of the tunnel being like, what is this life like, is there ever like a stop from this highway?
Well, in a lot of ways, like Neil McCauley's character is almost like Tom Cruise's character in Collateral. He's
Yeah,
just a
that's a
machine,
very good
right?
parallel. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like a
Hmm.
machine who just is meticulous with every detail, and does
That's
it
a
so
great
well that
parallel, actually.
yeah, I mean, again, Michael Mann directed
Michael
Collateral.
Mann, yep, yep.
Yeah, so I feel like they could be one in the same world.
See, in fact, if I were to
Yeah.
make if I were to remake Heat, like say in 2005 or 2010, I would have cast Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt. I feel like those would have been like great analogs for these
Oh,
these.
you think Brad Pitt could play the Pacino part?
No, no, no. Tom Cruise could play the Pacino part. Brad Pitt would
Okay,
play the Macaulay, the Neil
Macaulay.
part. Yeah.
Yeah, I would not put it past them that Brad Pitt should have been the Val Kilmer character too. I
Mm,
bet you anything they thought about
they
that.
probably thought
That they
about
had
it.
a short.
Sure.
He
Yeah.
had to have been on the short list for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Val Kilmer's character
It's
is
just such a
yeah. He's just
great setup. This structure of, like these two like alphas on the other end who are more or less like each other but have a different approach in life. Like this movie's meta too in that way. Like it's such good casting.
well. There's a Hong Kong police thing going on too. It's like two brothers who grew up. One became a criminal. One became a
Yeah,
cop.
yeah, the departed type of
That's
thing. Yeah.
it's very Hong Kong police type of stuff.
Dude, I love
Infernal
movies
Affairs.
of that era, like the Hong Kong police movies or the late
Yeah,
Hong Kong 90s movies.
yeah.
They have a
So
like
it touches on that.
romanticism, a tragic romanticism to them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, again, not to overuse the term, but it is very Shakespearean. You know,
Yeah.
Hmm.
Tragedy,
in that
like
sense.
elevated
Yeah.
tragedy.
Yeah. In any other world, they would be friends. I think they even say that in the diner.
Yeah, yeah, he says
It's
it.
like we can hang when if
Yeah,
we weren't against each other.
yeah.
And that one on one, that one on that we were waiting for that moment. We were waiting for them to come like
Face to face.
back in '95, face to face. We were like, bring it. And for
What a
some
scene
reason,
too, man. Like the fucking back and forth. Like, wow, you're watching like Roger
but
Nadal versus
but but back in '95, I thought it should have been bigger somehow, and it just was understated. It was not the performance I thought it was going to be.
dude, isn't that
Uh,
genius though, Tom? Like today's day, they would do it like a Batman v Superman, where they go all out on each other. Like the fact that it was just at a
yeah,
diner, they're right opposite each other. It's like pure acting, dude. They're doing the least. It's like mano
well,
y mano, dialogue, we dialogue, dude. It's like
well,
one
this is a
punchline after another. It's like wow. In Indian movies, you have this call this dialogue bazi, where it's like exchange
yeah.
of like these type of like grandiose dialogues which are gonna make like whistles and like hoots from the audience. Even though
Well,
this is a more subtle movie, like when I watch that scene, dude, I'm like clapping by myself and like some of these like responses.
well, also consider like these movies were made for adults, like grown-ups. And if a kid watches it, like I would consider myself a
Right,
kid back
right,
then,
right.
not as cinematically sophisticated. I
Yeah,
watched it like, when's gonna happen? You know, I wasn't really listening to the words. I was like, you know, Michael Corleone and Vito Corleone together. I was like, you know, that kind of attitude.
yeah.
So yeah, I wasn't really. I don't think I was prepared at that point to watch something with a little bit more depth. This is an adult movie. It's made for adults, grown-ups,
Hmm.
right? Um, so yeah, that's sort of, you know,
But I feel
but
like
now obviously I see the value of it.
this movie
Says that.
is
Oh, good.
sorry, go ahead. I was going to say this movie is a great example of, the value of cinema. Like this is cinema, man. This is not a tick.
Yeah.
This is not a video. I hope you don't watch this on your phone. Like I hope you get to experience. I haven't had the pleasure yet, but I really do want to see this in a theater with Dolby surround sound, dude. I feel like this movie was made for that.
Yeah, I mean they showed it recently on a film print at the uh, at the Egyptian? No, Vista. Sorry, Vista film print, and it obviously sold out. And I'm so bummed I missed it. You
If
know,
they shot this movie today, and I'm hoping they are going to avoid these pitfalls in the cinematography, isn't it like almost like a given? There would be like some, instead of that shot of like him bathed in blue, it would be those like shitty fucking disco Nicholas Winding Refn ass lights with like red, blue, green filters and everything is neon.
neon.
There would be so
Yeah.
much neon in this movie. I'm like, wow. It's not like there was less neon in LA in 1995 than 2010. In fact, more. But the way they shoot the city, because they're shooting it on film, those Panavision lenses, the choices they're making, some of the softness in the color grading when like they're in the streets or in the truck scenes. I'm like, you would lose all that in today a big scale movie like that. Just the way they would light it would be so fucking lame.
Well, there was word. Okay, so there was word. I don't know if this is a rumor. I don't know who told. I forgot who told me, but there was rumor that Michael Mann had remastered Heat at 4K, and it was scanned at 4K, and then resaw, and then he spoke up and said, "I forgot how wonderful film looks," and he is determined to shoot Heat 2 on film. This was the
No
last. I
way,
mean, I don't
really?
just to keep consistency, but yeah, somebody, I don't know who, you can look it up somewhere, I'm
Great
sure it's
choice.
out there. But I remember hearing something about like how he forgot how, how tactile film actually is instead of digital. Because he's been shooting digital for so long, he just forgot. And he shoots a
I
lot. He's like
hope
250.
he shoots it on film, dude. That would be a sight to see.
Yeah.
Michael,
That was the
his
rumor, yeah.
perfectionist ass coming back to films and choosing stocks and deciding like what the color should be.
Yeah.
Dude, that
And
would be
Dante Spinotti is still alive, so it'd be great to have him come back. So, it'd be great to see them team back up to do Heat too.
Do you see
Um,
that a lot?
Yeah.
Is that common in the industry, like a cinematographer making a comeback? I see like a lot of actors in these getting a second chance. What about some great cinematographer who's kind of fallen off, but now gets a second chance?
So
Big movie.
to a lesser
Always go
to a
for the
lesser
younger
ex-
person.
to a lesser extent, I would say somebody like Ed Lockman,
Hmm.
who sort of was in the '80s, was huge, and then sort of disappeared in the '90s, late '90s, and then sort of were like lived in the indie world. You
Hmm.
know, he's contemporary with Robbie Mueller, and so then now he's getting a resurgence because of film nerds and because he's still alive, and he's a real massive proponent of film. Like he's a film guy, you know and he bought the lab. So Duart closed shop about 2 years ago, and he bought the entire lab and warehoused it. So he's wanting to bring that back somehow. So yeah, he's legit. Ed Lockman. Yeah.
Ed Blackman.
Lockman, yeah, he does all of Todd Haynes's movies.
Oh,
But
really?
yeah, so
Dude,
he's
all
really
they shot
pushing
on
the
films.
digital.
Todd Haynes has been shooting on film since Carol, right?
His last three, I think, were digital. Um,
Oh, really?
you know, he yeah, he just has to make movies, and That's all they'll give them. So yeah.
You had if you were Michael Mann and you had access to as much expired yet stored absolutely properly with no moisture EXR 500T versus today's Vision 3 500T, what do you think the differences would be visually?
So honestly, no one ever really fully liked the 98.
Hmm.
The 500C back in that era was the 98. And because the Vision line was the first time they did the T grain, so that it was interlocking grains, right?
Hmm.
Instead of the circles, because there's gaps in between your crystals, and so
Hmm.
there's always like more grain, more noise. So the T lock changed the game. People, I would say the 500T Vision 3 today is the is been the best throughout his entire life.
Oh,
Hmm.
wow.
Like from Vision 1 to Vision 3, it's actually a massive improvement versus the other stocks. 200T skates here and there, but the 200T 93 5293 was incredible. Yana shot that until it died, like where to the very end.
Hmm.
Janusz Kaminski. So he loved that stock, right? So the 500T Vision 3 today far excels from the 98 from back in the era. But I think Heat was 95, so they may have used the original Vision 1 line, which was the 5279. And that was T grain lock, and everybody loved that stock too. That was a game changer. Once they moved from EXR to Vision 500, they were like, okay, this is great. We're good with this. And I mean, fucking Heat is just so smooth looking. Just a
Hmm.
smooth looking movie. Yeah. Still holds up. The lighting's beautiful.
Yeah.
Some of it looks sort of CG'd because I think he has this really weird thing sometimes when it's too blue.
So
Like
yeah,
even in like
some of the stuff in
like
like the Malibu house seems CG to me. I was like, there's
Oh
well
no way.
yeah,
yeah,
some
like
of those.
yeah,
I was wondering
yeah.
if that was just kind of like anamorphic moire, or if they shot that against a blue screen, keyed it
They just
out.
I'm guessing they just put a translight up. In the
Hmm.
old days, the translight was just a curtain that had a background,
And
right?
some of the stuff where he's like outside and you can see the LA skyline in the backyard, the Mulholland Drive, that seemed a little CG because he's too much
Yeah,
focus in the back.
yeah, it just looked fabricated, I guess.
Yeah,
But
because both the things were in like sharp focus.
yeah, the Insider has that same quality when he's walking on the beach. I'm like,
Mm.
dude, that's day for night. You know,
See,
that's
that's
so
where
totally day for
perfectionism
night.
goes like a little too. It's like he can't lose anything. You know, he's like both. I want it all.
Yeah. Well, he's Macaulay. He's Neil Macaulay. He always turns back, and
Hmm.
it's the death of him.
He is Neil McCauley, dude. Michael Mann. Yeah.
He's driving Ferraris, dude. So
Mhm.
yeah, I remember at Company 3, he'd have he'd always drive Ferraris to work to the office,
What a legend,
and
dude.
he's just a Ferrari guy, you know. So
Kind of explains his whole like thing.
so rating time.
Hmm.
Yeah, what would you rate it, Abene?
Dude, this is a solid four. And the only reason it's not like a five for me is like fucking that 2 hour, 50-minute runtime is like, that's a commitment. That's the only reason it doesn't get 5 stars.
It's self-indulgent. Yeah, I agree. Jake?
5 out of 5.
Hey,
Yeah, cool.
hey.
I'm a solid 4 out of 5 as well, leaning on 4.5.
Hmm.
There's some things that just kind of drag. Um, they spend way too much time sort of like with a relationship sometimes. The Amy Brenneman thing throws me off. I just don't feel the feel like I don't feel what I should be feeling with
Hmm.
their relationship. And it's a weird, really tough line because he's a cold, sharp instrument, and she's just this warm, open person, and I just don't feel the connection there. But that's pretty much how I, you know, felt about that then. So
Do you think the movie would have been 2 hours, 50 minutes if it was two other actors? Like just two regular actors? Do you think they would have gone this self-indulgent? Because this movie
you're
really,
saying,
it really like is reveling in the fact they know who you're here to see and what you're here to see. And they really like, take their time,
well,
you the internalization
Pacino,
to very
Pacino,
like
to me, Pacino's a little bit too big
hmm,
as well. Like sometimes he gets too big, like over here and over here, and he's just pointing it out. I was like, it's very theatrical. I don't know what his background was. Do you really know Pacino's background other than he has a relationship? Like, I think her name was Diana Venora. I think that was his wife.
hmm,
Um,
he's been
and
divorced.
he has a distance relationship with his daughter, which I was confused about.
Hmm.
Right? He has a daughter, and it was just this weird sort of like, do you really know any more of his background? He seems as distant as obviously Neil,
Wait,
but
was that his daughter or was it the girlfriend's daughter?
it was the girlfriend's daughter, and he was just kind of stepping in as a
Hmm.
stepdad or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just so uncomfortable to watch that relationship, but maybe that's why. Like, I feel like Michael Mann has lived that life, where he's had to deal with somebody else's kid, you know. So maybe that is real. That's the sort of realism in it that just elevates it into a different type of movie. You know, Christopher Nolan watched this movie to get the tonality of The Dark Knight, and you can see it. You can
Dude,
totally
for
see it.
sure. In the
That
the
opening,
shot with
the opening.
the Dark Knight on he's standing on the roof or whatever, and there's like this like dolly shot. That's literally
Yeah,
this frame, dude. The exact
yeah.
color of it.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's the I. You definitely know he studied that movie.
Oh
Plus,
yeah.
the tonal thing of the opening of The Dark Knight is very much like the shootout. It feels like that shootout.
Mm.
Everything is so raw. Everything's happening almost at real time, right?
That
Hmm.
one's Vision 3, so maybe that's sort of an indication of what Heat 2 could look like on Vision 3.
There you go. Done. I'm happy. 500T is a really good stock, man. Like you could shoot
Yeah.
an entire. People have shot an entire movie that way. Challengers was all shot with 500T. You know,
But the Dark Knight was
it's
also IMAX footage,
simple.
or just a little bit, not all of it was IMAX.
Yeah, they shot. Yeah, they didn't shoot all of it on IMAX, but back then it was noisier camera too,
Hmm.
so they had to take the dialogue into consideration.
Tom, have
Not
you
like
ever
no
shot
one
with an
cares.
IMAX?
What's that?
Have you ever shot with an IMAX camera?
No, no. They have one at Panavision, and we asked about it, and our connection there was like, no, no, you're not touching it. I go, oh,
Because
okay,
there's very few of them, huh?
yeah. I think there's like maybe 10 of the ones that actually are like the streamlined ones
Hmm.
that you can actually shoot like dialogue with ish. If you're like 10 feet away or 10 yards away. Um, and yeah, they just don't want to mess because it's finicky. There's a lot of things that they don't want people who don't know how to deal with it to touch it. So understandable. I was like, dude, we
They
will
were
be
designed
at
for
Panama.
like nature documentaries. So for like a guy like Nolan to even pioneer this thing where to shoot entire films on IMAX is pretty ballsy move, huh?
It's ballsy, yeah. Like I think he might have been the first to actually use it, implement it a lot in a feature film, because everything else was like like a theme park where you go to like a theme park and they'll show you the film Grand Canyon
Yeah.
live, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what
Soaring
IMAX
over
would use.
California. I think that was done in IMAX.
Yeah, I mean uh, they did like Circus. I've been reading old American cinematographers. It's like the evolution of man, and it was just reading them is hilarious because they were so cumbersome, so cumbersome. It's like 1,000 feet only gives you like 2.5 minutes of footage. So
It's
yeah,
crazy
not
that like how
practical.
much you can learn from like, films that have come before and like real masters like Michael Mann. Because now I'm trying to think of Nolan's filmography much later too, and I see some more influences. Like if you see the whole black and white portion of Oppenheimer, it's mostly like about characters and character study of Robert Downey's character. And so a lot
Mhm.
of like mid shots or close-ups, but in that format on an IMAX screen with that much information on black and white, dude, I
Right.
haven't had another experience like that in a cinema. Like, do you
So
guys
I heard,
like watching Oppenheimer?
I heard, okay, so I heard this sort of theory. A good movie stays with your main character at least 90% of the time, right?
Hmm.
So Michael Mann split his time between, De Niro and Pacino with good reason.
They get
And
bored
so
within 90
Oppenheimer,
minutes.
yeah, and Oppenheimer sort of like skates between the two stories as going, but it's a weird sort of like, if you can, if your protagonist is in your movie for over 90% of the time, you'll be better off, I'd say.
Hmm.
But these two sort of took the risk to, sort of spread I mean, honestly, between Cillian Murphy and Robert Downey Jr. Robert Downey Jr. actually almost like skated at the edge of overshadowing Cillian Murphy's character,
Yeah. In some
right?
aspects, maybe even did.
And a lot of, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of weird, because Cillian Murphy's character, the Oppenheimer character, is relegated to like basically one tone, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
he's that my mindset. Meanwhile, Robert Downey's character is just slowly, falling apart.
What did you think of that foot? Like, what was your experience of that black and white footage though? And Jake, if you saw it too, of watching it in
Uh,
IMAX, you did see it in IMAX.
I thought it was, I liked, hmm, like viewfinders, like with the little,
Hmm.
or viewmasters with the little wheels,
Hmm.
and then they're 3D, and
I
you
do.
look at the negative, and you get that sense of space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I saw the moments that were done in full frame
Hmm.
IMAX, like medium format size, the big frames,
Hmm.
and they had narrow depth of field, it
Yeah.
kind of gave me that sense of like dimension.
That's what they say a lot of times when
But
you see medium format stills. Everyone
Mm-hmm.
says it looks
dude,
3D, right?
I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna pull up my medium format again, and like, yeah, that was an aspect like I'd noticed uh, between that and like 35 mm. Can you guys talk a little bit more about that quality with that depth of field, or like why is that? What's happening there?
Well, the gauge is bigger.
Hmm.
So your negative is, 6'9", 6'7", 6'6". So
Mm-hmm.
the negative is bigger. So the depth of field will be shallow. And so the optics are a little bit different, you know. Uh, you may have noticed that you have a Pentax 6.7, right?
Yes.
So you may have noticed that that starts at a 3.5. So you have to close it down a little bit more.
Hmm.
But mostly it's because of the gauge is bigger. So you
Hmm.
get a little less depth of field. So if you wanted more depth of field, you'd have to light the hell out of that and close down.
Oh.
But 35's gauge is smaller. So anywhere between 4, 5, 6, you'll get like deeper focus that way. Um,
So what
with
effect does it have
Oppenheimer,
on the viewer compared to like, if I'm seeing like something shot on a glass, or I guess it's not about the glass, it's about the size of the negative. Something on
mhm.
35 mm versus something like a medium format. What other than just information, what else just qualitatively, like viewer wise, am I seeing different? Because the way I fell in love with medium format photography is I'd see people take photos of like just houses or like faces, and that depth of field was like so unique. They felt, I don't want to say realism or natural, because 35 feels more along those lines, but this was a little more like, I don't know, dreamlike.
I mean, for me, because it's sort of like it's going to be sharper. in that sense.
Mm.
The clarity will be cleaner
Mm.
versus 35. 35 will
Grainy.
be well compared to medium format, yes. And so there's sort of a separation that happens with where you put your focus on
Right.
medium format. And in the sense of houses, I'm guessing it's daytime house.
Yeah.
When you close down to like an 8 or 11 in
Mm.
exterior,
Mm.
you're going to get really sharp, but distances are going to be so far away that it's going to be, it will be forced to be sharpened.
Mm.
I would say our eyes probably function closer to what 35 may look like, just
Mm.
because because you don't have, unless it's not going to be razor sharp, let's
Right.
say. And 35 or medium format set tends to have almost a razor sharp image quality that
Mm.
sort of we're not used to seeing,
Mm.
and so we perceive that as maybe like a deeper, like like a very abnormal shot
Mm.
of what we're supposed to be seeing
For
instead,
me,
right?
one of the effects of Oppenheimer was seeing like some of those close-ups of RDJ's face on 70 mm in an IMAX screen, shot on that special black and white film, and black and white, like eliminating some of the distractions of color. Some of the just lines on his face and some of the expressions he would make, it made the human face an artifact itself. His
Yeah,
face was a piece of art. Like anything he was doing, I was like, dude, just from a forget the plot and the character, they all became like extra layers. Just from like an anthropological point of view, I was like, Jesus Christ, he like just the medium he's chosen to photograph this in, the human face is an art,
yeah,
a piece of
it's the
art.
landscape, yeah,
I've
because a lot
seen
of
it in
times,
Paul Thomas Anderson's like Licorice Pizza, and like one very famous scene where like this woman's super extreme close up is on film for like 5 minutes, and like
yeah.
every little tick
You
she does
talking about?
becomes so
Are
like
you
grand,
talking about?
you know.
Are you talking about the casting director
Yes, the
shot?
casting director,
Yeah, it's like
exactly.
right here. Yeah,
But it's so
yeah,
that's you remember that shot, right?
yeah.
Immediately
I do.
burnt
Yeah,
in my head, dude. There
yeah.
is who gets to see
Well,
our eyes don't get to see the human face like that. Even if you
a,
put a person this close to you, it'll
a
never
lot of
do
people,
those details.
a lot of people were wondering why he would shoot IMAX and close-ups. And like you said, you're right. It is, it is a landscape. A person's face is a landscape, and it's portrait. It definitely gives you that feeling, and that he's in his own world. And it feels, in their case with the framing, sometimes it felt claustrophobic
And
because he always kept having those weird dreams of destroying the universe.
and the
But
topic being like a biography too, like I felt I was more in the character's head because of this. Like because the
yeah,
character was so close, I felt like their soul was a little more available.